anybody else would think that it was going to be General Dix and myself, but doing a Jody to start off the show. But actually, the fact of the matter is, it's not that show. This is David's pick, and we have a very special guest on today, and we're delighted to have him on. And I'm going to let him tell part of his story. I'll tell part of it. We have Tommy Clack on. Many of you all know him, and know him from the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. And Tommy and I was very blessed last night to have a long conversation with Tommy, and I spoke with our mutual friend Rick White after I'd spoken to Tommy, and I tell you what, folks, Tommy's a lot tougher than I am, so he may be the one that makes it through the show, and I may or may not make it through the show.
Hello?
Yeah, Tommy, you there? Tommy, you there? You should be there, Tommy.
Hello?
Yeah, you're not hearing me? Tommy. Tommy, can you hear me all right now? Tommy, how about now? Okay. Tommy, seems like, are you hearing me okay now?
No.
No?
You got me now?
Yeah, I've got you fine.
You're,
Pardon?
I can barely hear you.
Barely hear me. Okay. How about now? Can you hear me better now? Tommy. Well, let's see. Tommy, did you call?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, I am not hearing you, David. I hear something, but I know it's you. I cannot make out what you say.
Okay, well let me call you back, okay? And we'll see if we can get a better connection for some reason. I can hear you just fine. It's got to be something I'm not sure on your end, but you know, I'm getting you 4x4 here, so we'll call you right back, okay? So, well, things happen, and this will be a good opportunity to take off our hats and tip them to another Hall of Famer, and that's General Richard Dix. And General Dix has been called back up and is serving back in the Army, and you'll hear different reports on television about not about General Dix, but on the logistics of what's going on across the country with ventilators and masks and everything else, and that's what General Dix has been called up on. So let's try this one more time. Okay, Tommy, can you hear me all right? Okay, well, I'm on the phone. Let me transfer you in, and we'll see what happens, okay? All right, hold on. Okay, Tommy, can you hear me all right now?
Okay, you got me?
Yeah, I got you fine. Can you hear me all right?
Okay, I don't know what's going on, Dave. I cannot understand. I know you're there. I can hear a voice, but I can't hear what you're saying.
Well, I quite frankly don't know what's going on either. All I can do is play with the buttons and see if one of them happens to get to better than the other one. How about now?
Okay, David?
Yeah.
Okay, you sound a little better. I can understand. I heard you say that. Go ahead now. I think we got something going now, okay?
Okay, so right now?
I got you. Yes, sir. Totally
okay.
Loud and clear now.
Good. All right. Well, it just takes a little bit of pushing of the buttons, I reckon. So, as I mentioned to begin with, hopefully people were listening then, we've got Tommy Clack on, and Tommy and I had the privilege of talking to Tommy last night, and quite an inspirational speaker and quite an inspirational story. And Tom is a whole lot tougher than I am, and without question. And normally I would go through it and we'd walk around and talk about what happened in Vietnam. And I meant to ask you last night, I asked you about IEDs, and basically back then it was, weren't they called Poppin' Johnnies?
That booby traps.
Yeah.
A lot of different words, that made out of many things, from grenades to 500-pound bombs.
And they used to use our sea ration cans for some of them, I believe.
They put a grenade in it with a tripwire and pull it out and bang.
And bang. So, do you mind relating your story of what happened in Vietnam?
I don't have a problem doing that. That's what you want me to proceed on?
Yeah, let's start it, and then everybody can sort of get a idea, a picture in their own mind, and then we'll just keep going with your story from there and your induction into the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. And and by the way, folks, I want you to remember that Tommy is available for, you do talks all over the country, and if you have a special need for a great inspirational speaker, may I suggest that you get a hold of Tommy Clack. And if you need information on that, we'll be glad to provide it, with Tommy's permission, obviously. But
well, thank you.
Anytime you need an inspiration, after I talked to you last night, Tommy, I went to bed shaking my head, and you're just absolutely incredible. So I'll let you tell your story, and then we'll go from there.
Well, part of my background is I grew up in a military family. My dad was 20-year Army, fought World War II in Korea, so I grew up with that disciplined background. I think that's still helping me, 73 years later after birth. But I was one of those that knew I was going in the military. I think when we grow up in that environment, that instills in us we want to be like our dads, and I needed to find out if I was half the man my dad was, and volunteered for the Army and volunteered for Vietnam, which was my generation's war. Got to serve with a Charlie Company, 2nd and 27th Wolfhounds, with the 25th Infantry Division over on the Cambodian border, just northeast of Saigon. And like every company, battalion, squad, platoon, whatever, there's always the potential for constant engagement. I think that's one of the odd things about Vietnam. You could go for days without seeing anybody or anything, and all of a sudden just all hell breaks loose, and you're in it for life. So that was pretty much the environment we were in, probably all over Vietnam. But on May 29, 69, we got out to go on a several company operation, and I was assigned as the forward observer to Charlie Company in terms of conducting the artillery strikes.
Yeah, I started to say, isn't Charlie Company martyrs?
Say again?
As I recall, and I'm wrong more than I'm right, but isn't the Charlie Company martyrs?
Well, that is 11 Charlie in terms of an MOS.
Oh, okay.
Charlie Company, there's Alpha Bravo, Charlie Delta Echo companies in a battalion.
Right.
So let's say that was Charlie Company was a company of 120 to 160 men. Okay.
Right.
But 11C is mortars. I do believe you're right on that in terms of infantry. But I was there assigned FO, and we were out on this mission, and we were cording off a village in terms of multiple companies being involved in this mission that day. And we're going along, and we don't know if it was incoming or a booby trap mine, whatever, but I got hit in the right foot by a high explosive round, and that's what really saved my life. I was conscious for about 5 minutes after it happened. I remember going through the air, and I landed on the ground, and I still had vision at that point. I could see everybody running everywhere, and I laid back down, and I looked over, and my right arm was gone. My whole right arm, shoulder are totally gone, and I started losing consciousness at that point. And I remember a couple of guys came up and started working on me, and the one thing they remember, we talk about this when we have our reunions, I kept telling them to please move my right arm. It was hurting, and it wasn't there. So that was a rather unique thing there, but it turned out that the explosion took off my right leg, over about 3 inches of the right femur and the left leg above the knee. And what saved my life is the fireball from that explosion cauterized everything, and I did not bleed out.
Yeah, I started to say, my God, with that much damage, it would have only taken seconds to have bled out.
Exactly. And the one thing that John Quintrell, who was sergeant of the 2nd Platoon of Charlie Company, I actually was with them walking around that day on this mission, and they remembered that I looked solid black with just white eyeballs. So you can imagine, I think, the horror of all that, and a lot of guys still don't like to talk about what they looked at that day, but that is the reality of war and combat. And on the way back on the helicopter, I still remember this, and very vivid in my mind. All of a sudden, people laugh at this, but it happened to me. I had what we call a near-death experience, and I actually came out of my body, and I was at the foot of where my foot would be, looking at me laying down, and they covered me up with a poncho, signifying that I had passed away. And when we got back to Cu-Chi, I was laid out on the tarmac there with the poncho still over me, and a doctor later, don't know the time frames, but later a doctor came out of the 12th evac and doesn't know why he walked over to where several of us were laying there, and he lifted up my poncho and he saw something in me, and here I am. I'm still alive 50 plus years later by the grace of God, and just a very unique experience.
Wow. Oh. You know, we and this is a good place to throw it in. I've made it very clear, as I made it clear and told you last night, I did not serve in Vietnam. I served in what they call now the Vietnam era, but I did not serve in Vietnam. But when heroes that we've had on this show and other shows have to be those the dust-off pilots. I think they're the greatest pilots in the world, and
absolutely.
You know, going after all of the others that they've gone after, and Donna Rowe, Captain Rowe has been on the show, and
great lady.
Oh yeah, she is a beautiful lady, and I told her, I said, you know, had someone been wounded and woke up and saw you, they'd think they were in heaven at that point.
Understand.
She's a beautiful lady.
That was one of the missions I had when I eventually got back to where I was independent. I actually sought out and found the helicopter pilot from that day in the crew, and the doctor and the nurse that I woke up to, and had the opportunity to meet up with them and tell them thank you, eyeball to eyeball, for saving me. That was one of my missions in life. So it was a nice thing for me to clear up in my conscience to say thank you to them.
Oh, my goodness. That's incredible that you were able to find them and remember their names and all that and go back and find them. Were they still in the military? Or?
They're all out. The nurse is out in California. Doctor lives up in Washington. Helicopter pilot died. You know, that was back in the early 70s, middle 70s when we got that accomplished. So, everything happens for a reason.
Yep, and, Colonel White has a saying, there are no coincidences.
Exactly.
It, like you said, it happens for a reason. We don't know why, and yet many of us even today are saying why. And
But one of the things I want to address that you brought up, I have said this my whole life to all veterans, and I was employed as a veteran service officer. I fought the VA on behalf of veterans and their families. The VA is in the business of finding a way to say no and minimize what they do, and we service officers will find a way to say yes and maximize what they're required to do. But every veteran, whether it's Guard or Reserve, active duty, no matter where you served in the world, you're part of the whole team called the United States military, so you are a veteran. I think the VA did a big justice to our generation when they came up with the term Vietnam War, Vietnam era. Anybody could have been activated to Southeast Asia. You just had another duty to serve elsewhere, but you did your duty, so thank you for your service.
Well, thank you. And, that's a lot different from what a lot of folks felt like back in the late 60s and early 70s. But, I have all the respect in the world for those friends and people that I'm very fortunate getting to know.
We're all part of a great team. We're all part of a great brotherhood now. We take care of each other, okay?
We do, and it's a lot different. And I've been blessed to meet so many of our Georgia heroes through Rick White, and like you said, though, they're all heroes. And I have I think I mentioned to you, I have a son that's in the Air Force, an officer in the Air Force stationed in Germany, and I'm very, very proud of him and what he's doing and his decision to go into the military. And as long as we're there, Tommy, I might as well put a plug in, as we talked about last night. The military, if you're a senior in high school or you're about to graduate from college and you haven't decided what you want to do, or if you're a parent and you have a teenager or a college graduate that hadn't decided what they want to do, take a look at the military. It offers everything, and it's not all. Everybody, unfortunately, I say everybody, many people, unfortunately, look at the military as a Tommy situation, but it's not. It's a great opportunity, and you can learn a career. The pay is good nowadays, and and like you said, Tommy, you're joining the largest fraternity or sorority in the world. And
absolutely. I get in trouble in a lot of high school campuses that go on for encouraging all the seniors and juniors who don't do whatever to think about the military as an option, because it is a great training ground, and you get to be with some of America's finest sons and daughters that are friends for life. Okay.
Oh, no question. And there were a couple of terms that came out. I got your six. I got your back. And that's what the military is all about. You've got somebody either on your side or behind you or even in front of you, like the FO that you were, Tommy. The only thing that's dumber than being an FO, pardon me, is that point. But, FO's scary.
We're all part of the team, okay?
All part of it. It just sometimes it's a better part of it than the. But there, in Vietnam, there was no good position other than you were surrounded by friends, and you knew that you had the guys back in front of you, and somebody behind you had your back. And one of our hosts was talking one time about drugs and the problem with drugs in Vietnam. And like I told her, the Army had a way of taking care of their own drug problems. I won't go into that, but they did, and they did.
Absolutely.
And, you couldn't be out on patrol with somebody that was hiring a kite, and so they took care of it. But this, when did you? Okay, you get medevaced out. You probably went from wherever the first triage was, and then you were flown to Germany, or?
No, I actually spent 7 days, and I was actually out. My records show I was actually unconscious for 7 days.
Wow.
And I came to at the 12th Evac in Cu Chi, Vietnam, and went from there to, I think it was called the 106 Hospital in Japan, and then to Guam, and I still remember Guam because the Air Force nurses were there, and they were well, all nurses are great, but I still remember the Air Force nurses just had a vibrance about them in terms of taking care of us at that time frame. Went from Guam to Travis Air Force Base in California to Fort Scott. I think it was called Fort Scott or Scott Air Force Base in Illinois, and then to Fort Gordon, Augusta, which is where I spent 2 months. No, excuse me. Let's see, 2 months, yes, and then I ended up in the VA in Atlanta for another 21 months.
Oh, wow. Well, I know the Claremont VA well, or I know where it is. I'd never been in it, but hopefully it was. I don't know any other way. I hope you got your money's worth. And they obviously, someplace along the line, they took care of you well. And
well, when I came back, I was actually one of the first patients at the Atlanta VA Medical Center. I grew up 3 miles from where it was built.
Wow.
So I got to come home. But the Atlanta VA, back at that time, became the Southeastern Regional Center for multiple amputees. So we had, at any one time, a couple of hundred guys in there missing multiple limbs. So that was another unique brotherhood that we had. And I still keep all of us that went through there together in terms of what's going on with us. We used to have reunions of just us amputees, but it got too hard on a lot of the guys, so we haven't done that probably in 10, 15 years now. But back then, the nurses and doctors and everybody in the staff were of the World War II generation, and they looked at us like their sons, and they came in after duty hours on the weekends. You know, they invited us to their homes for dinner. They took us out on the weekends. It was a whole different environment back then. Wow. In terms of what it is now. But the VA does a good job with what it has. I simply think it's overloaded. It'll never be properly funded. The doctors and nurses have a massive workload on them in terms of the number of people they have to handle. So it's just you want to see socialized medicine, go to the VA.
Yeah,
okay?
No, thank you.
That is total socialized medicine on who you can see, when you can see, and months and many months down the road before sometimes you can get an appointment. But that's reality. What bothers me about the VA the most is, as I said earlier, that they don't like me saying this, but I firmly believe they find a way to do the least and find a way to say no when they should be looking to find a way to say yes and maximize what they have the ability to provide, okay?
Well, and certainly you can interrupt me and tell me I'm crazy, but I have this real thing on, and again, I did not serve in Vietnam. I served in that era, but I have this thing that I don't believe anybody should be allowed to run for office that hasn't been in the military. And the reason being is it's an old American Indian saying that until you've walked a mile in my moccasins, who are you to judge me? And that's a lot of people have said, walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my boots. Someone like some of our politicians today that are on the Armed Service Committee and others that have powerful positions, they have no clue. And as far as I'm concerned, veterans of all, it's just like the Blue Water Bill that Trump signed on December the 10th. Of all the stupid damn things to be held up on by the VA was that someone sitting on a boat outside of Vietnam that had been on patrol, either the rivers or outside of in the ocean or whatever, was not eligible for Agent Orange coverage because they weren't on the ground, and yet the spray on the boats, they probably got more of the Agent Orange in many cases than some of the troops that were in country. And
well, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
You know,
and
that
that's
was
what
just
I talk about. The
crazy.
VA tries to minimize what they do. Okay.
And in fact, instead of minimizing, they should be trying to maximize.
Exactly.
You know, and if they want to charge somebody for it, charge those folks that never served and have never done anything for their country other than gripe. And
well, there are a lot of great employees in the VA system who want to do what is right and constantly try to do that. So those of us that deal with the VA are blessed to have them. But one of the other things that most Americans don't realize is most of our severely combat wounded guys, like multiple amputees like myself from my generation and even this current generation, if they don't choose to deal with the VA simply because of the overload of a long schedule, and if they've got military TRICARE and other outlets with their job in terms of health insurance, that's where they go, just to not deal with the frustration of dealing with the VA.
That's not right. That's not right.
But again, there's still good people there that try to do what's right. It's just overloaded. What they need to do, and people chastise me for this, I've been in favor from day one, is give all of us veterans who are in need of this kind of service, give us a card and let us choose our own doctor and deal with that person for the rest of our life, and let the United States government provide for that, like a lot of countries do for their military. Okay?
Well, haven't they opened that up to some extent at this point?
They have, but that's another constant fiasco. We talk to a lot of veterans that try to use what's called the choice program. It works, and then sometimes it doesn't work. The main thing is that if a veteran wants to go to a doctor in his or her hometown, let them do that rather than driving 60, 80 miles to a VA.
Oh, yeah, and waiting 2 or 3 or 4 hours at the VA.
That's just part of America. We deal with it and we move on. Okay.
Well, until you came on America's Web Radio and started talking about some of these things, and I bet you this kid ain't gonna drop the ball, and we're gonna keep dribbling that ball until we get some reaction out of some people that are running for office coming up in November, and we're going to expose the people that are for and against. If they have a record, we will expose them for and against the veterans. And we touch a lot of veterans. And I want to bring this up too. Any veteran that is listening, and I don't care if you're from the Revolutionary War, any veteran that's listening, and are listening in 3 months, 2 months, 5 months, whatever. If you've been affected by the virus and your business had to close and you've been shut down for a while, whenever you open up, if you want free advertising, call me, David at americaswebradio.com. You can email me or you can call the office, and I'll see that you get free advertising about Joe's hot dog stand is reopened, whatever it might be. Tired, I don't care what it is. At the same token, if you're a veteran and you're opening a business, and we've been doing this now for months. If you're opening a business and you're a veteran, let us know and we'll advertise it free of charge. There's absolutely no charge. If it's Joe's hot dog stand, we'll advertise it for you, Joe. Or if it's Joe's Plumbing, we'll advertise that. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, actually, but certainly not in the United States. We have people and veterans from all over the country listening to us, from all over the world listening to us, and we'll be glad to give you free advertising about your business. All you have to do is be a veteran, give us a little bit of proof on when you served, and you're off and running. You can even be a Vietnam veteran era person. Oh my goodness, with the plague on you. But anything for veterans we'll do, and we'll be glad to advertise your business. And I bet if we talked to Tommy just right, I would almost bet that if you got a business that's reopening, that he'd even do an ad for you.
We'd be glad to support veterans as a whole, and that's one part of my mission since I got up and around in the 70s. And I've often wondered why we don't have this, and I'm not the one that probably could do it, but why don't we have a directory of businesses in Metro Atlanta or Georgia and every state that are owned by businesses that are owned by veterans, so we know who to go to.
Well, I tell you what,
my whole life I have done nothing but I deal with veterans for my printing needs or trophies or plaques or whatever I'm doing, my car repair.
Yeah.
I always seek out a veteran.
Well, I tell you what, we've got a gentleman named Bob Babcock, and he has a publishing company. In fact, he just has released his book, I'm Ready to Talk, and it's stories of Vietnam veterans. And he has Deeds Publishing, and I bet you anybody that's listening from any state, you contact me and we'll do exactly what Tommy just suggested. And most veterans now are putting it on owned by veterans, or my business is, veteran owned, whatever.
Exactly.
But we'll be more than happy to start promoting that. And I too, this sounds crazy, not crazy, but the safety of dealing with a veteran. They're not all angels by any means, nor is anyone else that I know of. But by the same token, if you go in, I'm a veteran, you're a veteran, and 9 out of 10 times they're going to take good care of you.
Absolutely, I'm a firm believer in that. I've been dealing with the same printer my whole life and the same plaque and trophy company my whole life. I know they're going to do me right and do a great job. Exactly.
So, I'll be glad to work with Tommy on it, and not trying to take it away from you, Tommy, but we can.
I've wondered why there isn't such a directory. I'm not one to put it together, but it would be a valuable tool.
Oh yeah, and we can we'll do a website on it. Anything, you just contact us and we will work with you and see that it's done. And like I said, if you have a business that's opening back up after this pandemic stuff, let us know. And again, we want to salute General Dix for, they only asked him once, and he said, certainly I'll come back. And
absolutely,
he's in charge of the logistics of getting everything from masks to ventilators where they need to go, and seeing who has an abundance of them and where they can be shipped. And General Dix is, like I told him, I'm your age, Tommy, and I told him if he'd take me back, I'd continue to spit polish his boots. That he is a leader of leaders. And
well, that's really funny, but I think all of it's not funny. You're serious, because all of us veterans feel like we could still do something to participate. I still. You will laugh at this, but I remember when Desert Shield Storm started in August of '90. I had some friends at Fort Mac, and I hunt and fish year-round and shoot. So I called and I said, listen, I can sit on a rooftop with a rifle and still hit targets 300 yards away and find a job for them, okay?
Yes, sir.
They all laughed, but I was serious.
Oh, yeah. And, at some, this is a scary thing to say, but at some point, we may have to do that.
God forbid, but a lot of us think that, don't we?
Yep, and I tell you what, folks, if you want to scare yourself to death, and I really hadn't meant to say this, but I will, if you want to scare yourself to death, find out how many Muslims are running for political office this year in 2020. The number this is across the country, the numbers are outrageous, and as much as China we're able to see what China can do.
Be involved and aware of what's going on in their community. That's one of the things I think our generation, and we're both 73. When we grew up, we knew our neighbors on both sides of us, down the street and up the street. We took care of each other. We knew who was sick and provided food. we don't know what's going on in our communities anymore. People just don't get outside of their own property, and that's what needs to change. Okay?
Yes, sir.
We got to be more involved with each other and know what's going on in every aspect that affects our community.
I've got, and you know where I live. I got 2 neighbors that I know their names, and beyond that, I don't have a clue, and it's a shame. And one of them has always had a flagpole and a flag flying, and yet he never served a day. But I always respected it, and I think it blew over in our last big storm the other day. But,
well, see, I think our generation caused part of this because it's funny, but I'm one of those, when I get on an elevator somewhere, I'd say hi to everybody. Nobody says hi back.
Yeah.
You know, you're out walking and you make eye contact and say, how are you doing today? Nobody talks back. But we've raised a generation of kids this thing called danger stranger or stranger danger or something. You know, talk to them and they back up and say danger. You know, we've instilled in a whole generation that you just don't communicate with people. You know?
You know, that's funny that you mentioned that, because I had gotten to this point, but it's certainly backed off now with all that's going on. But I went through some, I won't even go into it, but tougher than normal times back in the early 2018, and I started, was talking to some folks, and I started trying to do a little attitude adjustment of my own. And so whenever I was at a grocery store or doing something, and it really became a game, and it was a fun game, because I'd see somebody and I'd smile at them and nod, you know, like hello or whatever, but I'd smile, and in many cases a couple of years ago you'd get that smile back, and it was like a game that I was playing. Well, will they or won't they, you know?
Understood.
And but you know, like this, my thinking on this pandemic thing is that we ain't seen nothing yet. I'm not as concerned about catching COVID-19 as I am, you know, not only the economy, but changes in life. They're talking about no more handshakes, no more hugs, no more this, no more that. And I think we're in for a world of change, and I'm not smart enough to identify it or even guess at it, but I think we've got, and this was something.
Well, everybody just needs to remember we're all human beings, and we still got to take care of each other. You know, here in the South, we do hug and do handshakes. I don't know if that will ever totally go away, especially in our families and our churches, you know, other outlets where we know everybody. You know, God forbid we reach a point where we don't even communicate with each other.
Oh, yeah. Let me ask, what, and I don't mean to, well, you and I talked about it last night. It's not a prying question, it's just the shock of waking up and saying, oh my God, what, I can't imagine what that was like, and the thoughts that you had about my future. What am I going to, you know, how long, I mean, you're incredible, and our chat last night just was the icing on the cake of how incredible you are. But the scary times that you must have gone through, both at the VA and well, I guess you went to did you go to Walter Reed as well?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay.
But part of I think who I am is how my parents raised me. I've always worked. If I wanted something, I had to earn money to buy it. If I made mistakes, it was my responsibility to own up to and correct it. You know, I grew up in athletics, so I was always in good shape, and I like competition. And I can honestly say that I don't ever remember, and those around me don't remember me ever being down about my situation. And I think that's part of my faith in God. Is there's a reason for everything. There's a reason for everything. So, you know, you assess what you got and you move on. And I've still got a lot of great talents and abilities. And and God is good to me. The first words out of my mouth when I wake up each morning are, thank you, God, for another day to be alive. So we move forward. And, people laugh at this, but part of my message, and I do a lot of different venues in terms of public speaking, high schools or colleges or Memorial Days, Veterans Days, banquets, whatever, but I always share with people that to me there are 5 words that I have to live each day to know I lived a good life, and they're in the order that I prioritize them and what I need to do, and they are God and self, family, community, and country. And if I live those each day, I have had a great life, and I can die and move on, and I ain't worried about dying. God is good.
Well, and your sacrifice, and I don't even think you look at it like that. It was a sacrifice. It was just part of the job, and there you went. And
in many ways, I do that. I don't sit around and think about what I can't do. I know my limitations, but I'm one of those. I will try. I have no paralysis. God was really good to me. I have no paralysis, and I actually, you're going to laugh at this, but when Six Flags in Atlanta was starting, I actually went out and test ride some of their rides to see if somebody like me could stay in the chairs.
Wow!
And I thought it was fun. Okay, and you back before green screens. The green screen in the movie where they can make everything look real and it's not. I was used in several situations where they needed an amputee in a scene, and I did that. God, I thought that was fun. It was realistic, So you make use of what you got, and and the only dumb questions are question not asked. Okay.
You make use of what you've got, and I don't chastise, but far be it from me, but many of the things that are happening today and many of the shows that we have on America's Web Radio, people ask, or people will comment, or this or that, or whatever the case might be, but it's true with everything from addiction to immigration to veterans, up and down the gambit. And in my 73 years, I have never seen. I mean, I'm totally amazed at the knowledge that we have at our fingertips. I mean, all we have to do is type in something, and you get the answer almost across the board. And we as a country, and I'm wondering sometimes if this isn't part of why we're going through what we're going through, is to teach a lesson that, God gave us a brain, and it wasn't just to hold a place in the skull, it was to use. And we as a public and don't use it, certainly not to the capacity that we could, and I'm as much at fault as anybody else is, but we have all this information, and yet we can't walk in the other person's shoes, and we don't take the time to educate ourselves, and in turn we don't take the time to educate our children. And in some ways, this whole pandemic thing we may not look at it as a blessing, but it may be a blessing for families coming together. I don't have a family, but families coming together and teaching their kids and seeing what their kids are doing, and they're forced to do it now, whereas before, schools were almost looked like as a babysitting center.
Absolutely.
And that's not what they're there for, and that's not what the parents are there for. And so
I actually made that same comment back in late February to several people, that I think we're going to see that the kids that are at home and are getting school done faster in fewer hours than sitting in the classroom all day, that they're going to have second thoughts about going back. Okay? So parents and families are interacting, and I think that's great. So, we all have the opportunity. Here, my grandkids know this, and my son and daughter just growing up. I read constantly. I don't know enough. I need to know more than I know, so I'm constantly educated. But I'm one of those that you'll laugh at this. I practice something that Sun Tzu's in The Art of War had in his thesis. Know your enemy.
Mm-hmm.
You need to learn everything about the other side so you can articulate your side better. So you've got to educate yourself constantly.
That brings up another point. Friday, we have a show on the Master's Message, and this is our Kung Fu Master that we have now that's doing a show, and we're going to start every show off with meditation. And it's Shi Daru is the Kung Fu Master, and he was orphaned at 3 years old, and is almost like the grasshopper story, And
wow.
He moved in. The monks took him in, and they taught him, And like I said, he's a master and a teacher, and he has spoken at Yale and Harvard and many medical schools. Basically, mind over body, and the power of the brain to control what the functions of your body. And
absolutely,
he is incredible and a great speaker, and he is going to be doing a weekly show for us. And we talked the other day that the first 2 or 3 minutes of the show each day, each Friday, will be meditation, and helping people across the country find out about meditation and the power that it has for healing and the power it has for many things. And I might add, he's also a Christian. He's a Presbyterian, and so he and I have that one thing in common, that we're both Presbyterians. But he is a wonderful, beautiful man that wants to help society, and he's a great teacher. And so we invite everybody to listen on Fridays. Friday at 10 o'clock, I believe, is the time that his show is going to be on. And
well, that's awesome. Wow. You definitely have a variety of people on this show you've got. That's great education unto itself.
We have the most unique shows, and I am very, very blessed that we have the greatest of hosts going. They are just absolutely tremendous, and they're experts in their field, and they're lovers of humanity, and they give of their time. And Shi will be Shi Daru is his name, and he is going to be quite an asset to the radio station, and we're looking forward to his show, and his show changing lives. And we just did a show a few minutes ago called The Doctor's Lounge, and Scott Barber is an orthopedic surgeon, and he's bringing the truth, as do all the doctors that participate in the show. He's bringing the truth about what we're talking about in hospitals. Just like you mentioned, if you want socialized medicine and want to see how good it is, go to a VA. And it's funny because you mentioned it, and this is an hour after Scott had mentioned it. And we just can't go with socialized medicine, folks.
No, that's not the answer.
No. And, we have to help ourselves. And I know that my grandfather's saying describes you 200%, Tommy, that God helps those that help themselves. And you have certainly helped yourselves through a crisis that most of us, certainly myself included, I can't even imagine, and I can't wait until we're sitting across the table from each other in the near future.
Well, we go through life with a lot of people that help us achieve what we achieve. We don't do it alone. It's always a team effort. And I share this with your audience. That I knew how my family was going to interact with me by two things that happened. My mom came to Fort Gordon, Augusta when I arrived there, and she shared with me later that she asked the doctor if there was anything wrong with my brain. And he said, no, it's intact. And my mom said, well, then I'm not worried about my son. He'll solve this. But back in the day when I was a teenager, deer season used to open up on the first Saturday in November. Now it opens up as early as October. But I was still in the VA hospital laying flat. I got hit in May 69. I did not sit up in a wheelchair until January of 70.
Wow.
So I'm in the hospital bed, and Friday night before that Saturday opening deer season, my dad and my uncle come in, and they had arranged for permission from the doctor to take me down to our deer land and put me in the back of, we had a 1954 truck that we converted as our hunting truck, put me in a bed in the back of it, took me down to Monticello, and I was there with all the people I had grown up hunting and fishing with and scouting with my whole life. Now, I didn't get to stay the whole day because it didn't work out, but that told me my family was going to be there for me, and I was going to make it. And we need family to do everything we do in life. People just can't do it by themselves, okay?
You just hit home. I lost my family a couple of years ago, and it's not to death or anything like that, just circumstances. And
understood.
But
now you have a whole different family, David. You got everybody you've interviewed and that listen to your show and know who you are. That's a family unto itself, bud.
That's true. That's very true, and I'm very, very fortunate. And when you get down, you get that call from a friend, and you get back up again. And I've been very, and I got to give all, or not all the credit, but I've got to reach out and say Rick White is an incredible gentleman unto himself and quite a Christian as well. And that.
Amen.
Rick is director of the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame, and I don't know of a veteran one that he doesn't love. And oh, by the way, I always ask whoever I'm interviewing on this show one important question, and it's only one. Can you name one veteran that you know that can only tell one story?
Not possible. Not possible.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, understood.
Good
point.
They have they take a little bag with them everywhere they go, and they've got that bag stuffed full of stories. When I was, and that's the way a veteran is. And that's, you're never for lack of conversation when you got 10 or 12 veterans sitting around you. There's always somebody talking, and there's always that guy that's going to be the one-upsman, And,
understood.
But it's fun, and it's great, and I'm looking forward to. And you live out there real close, like I do, to when Mike Mazzell can give us another date when they're going to open the healing wall for Vietnam at in Johns Creek. They had to put it off. They were going to start it on the 20, or not start it, but have the opening ceremonies on March the 28th. But because of the pandemic and some of the completion of it, they had to postpone the grand opening. But it should be coming. I'm guessing maybe by September something. I don't know. I'm waiting on Mike Mazzell to call, but. It's going to be quite a sight, and it means so much to so many people. And Mike Mazzell has done a fantastic job, and looking forward to it.
Well, there you go with it. That's a group of veterans that came together and decided they wanted to make something happen.
Yes, sir, and they did.
And they did.
And we'll all be there with our. Radio Sandy Springs, America's Web Radio. That was a flashback mistake, by the way. Anyway, we'll all be there with America's Web Radio and waving our flags and supporting Mike and the JC Veterans Association. That they work their tail off, and they're great guys. So, with that, what else? Relate a story that have you got one that you'd like to tell, Tommy?
Well, the great part about my travels around the state and the country is I get to meet some of the most unique, great people everywhere, and they're all in the veterans military community. But I had an opportunity last Veterans Day. I was out in Branson, Missouri for several days speaking at several venues, and I got to speak at a college called the College of the Ozarks.
Oh, yeah.
And
I happen to know it. Oh,
them.
yeah, I am. And
I was so impressed with what they do for their students and how they operate. And at that point, President Davis had told Nike to take their $1.2 million to shove it after the Kaepernick incident, and he got chastised for that. But they came back from that loss of money. But wow, talk about emulating what America's all about, working your way through college with no debt, growing your own food, going to classes, to worshiping God, creating your own food. So you're familiar with this. I share that story with a lot of people. I am so impressed.
You can't find a more beautiful area in the world, I don't think. And all of the students have a job, and
exactly.
They either wait tables, or they bring food, or they cook, or they do this, or they do that. And I'm it's funny again that you mentioned that, because that goes back to when I was 10 or 12 years old. So 60 years ago I was there, and my parents, when I was looking to go to college, I had thought about there, and then totally forgot when I graduated from high school because I thought it was so neat. All of the students had jobs, and I can tell you the name, but I could almost tell you what they look like. The kids that would wait on us,
Exactly. And, they grow their own cows and cut their own meat. Hogs and cows, raise horses, vegetables, fruits. It is just an impressive campus, and I applaud them for what they're doing. And to get in there as a student, you got to be able to prove that you can't afford to go to school. So that's one of the criteria they have now.
Wow.
So those kids understand that they've got to make it happen, and they graduate 98% of those that come there. That's what's even more amazing.
Oh yeah, that's tremendous. Oh, now you have. You keep messing up my head, Tommy. I'm getting sort of tired of this.
I hear you.
Last night I couldn't sleep thinking about you, and now you bring up a memory from 70 years ago, 60 years ago, 65.
Well, there's a lot of great memories across this country. We've got America is the greatest society God's ever created, and if one studies history, you come to understand that no matter what the other side says, the rest of the world wants to emulate us, okay?
That's right. You're right, absolutely. And just like we heard today, why did China do this? Because they wanted to prove that their labs were better than ours?
Yep. Absolutely.
How sick can you get, you know?
Yeah. Well, they're probably a lot sicker than that. We just haven't seen it. God forbid we do, okay?
That's true. That's very true. Tommy, we've run out of time. I've talked right through, and I gotta push the button, and all I can say is thank you. And will you come back and be on America's Web Radio? In fact, if you don't mind holding on, I'd like to talk to you afterwards.
I would feel honored to do so, and I just thank you for the opportunity and appreciate what you're doing. It takes a lot of time to accomplish what you do with your web seminars and all that you do. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you're doing for America, Guy.
Thank you, sir. We will be back with more right after a couple of messages. And Tommy, I'll pick up and we'll talk for a second.
Yes, sir.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Want to give your family or loved one the perfect gift? Then go online and check out the TornadoBodyDryer.com. I love mine and the warm heat air massage it gives me after my shower.
The Tornado Body Dryer is super. You'll love it, and you'll love having one in your shower.